More than 1,000 peer-reviewed studies, 30 years of continuous investigation, hundreds of randomized controlled trials, multiple independent meta-analyses, safety reviews from the International Society of Sports Nutrition, the American College of Sports Medicine, and the International Olympic Committee. When you evaluate any supplement's evidence base, these numbers matter, and creatine's numbers are in a different category from almost everything else available. But the quantity of research is only part of what makes creatine's evidence base exceptional. The quality, diversity, and internal consistency of the research are what make it truly robust. Let's start with study design. The gold standard in clinical evidence is the randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial. Random assignment to treatment or control groups eliminates selection bias. Double-blinding prevents both participants and researchers from knowing who received which treatment, eliminating expectation and confirmation bias. Placebo control accounts for the fact that participants who believe they've received an active treatment often show improvement simply from that belief. Creatine has been studied extensively using this design. Not once, not in a handful of studies, but in hundreds of independent trials conducted across multiple decades, research groups, and countries. The consistency of findings across all of these independently conducted, blinded, placebo-controlled trials is the strongest form of evidence that a supplement effect is real. Effects that are only placebo-driven or methodologically fragile disappear when you apply rigorous design. Creatine's effects don't. The diversity of populations studied is equally important. Creatine's performance benefits have been confirmed in young adult men and women, older adults, adolescent athletes, vegetarians, omnivores, trained strength athletes, endurance athletes, team sport players, and untrained individuals. Clinical populations with various health conditions have also been studied with consistent findings. A real physiological effect should appear across different populations. A placebo effect or a population-specific anomaly typically doesn't replicate across groups as different as elderly women in rehabilitation and elite sprinters. Creatine does. Meta-analyses, statistical pooling of multiple studies, have examined creatine's effects on strength, power, lean mass, sprint performance, cognitive function, and safety markers. The results are remarkably consistent. Creatine combined with resistance training produces greater improvements in strength and lean mass than training alone. Creatine improves short-duration, high-intensity performance. Brain creatine levels and cognitive performance improve with supplementation, and in healthy individuals, no adverse effects on kidney, liver, or cardiovascular function have been found. The reason this matters for someone deciding whether to supplement, you're not relying on one promising study that might be a false positive. You're relying on a convergent body of evidence from hundreds of independent scientists who were not coordinating their findings and whose results consistently pointed in the same direction. That's what scientific consensus looks like from the inside. Not one dramatic study, but a mountain of consistent, replicable findings across 3 decades of investigation. The practical relevance of creatine's research robustness extends beyond evidence evaluation. It has policy implications. In countries where supplement regulations are strict, particularly for products marketed for children, adolescents, or clinical populations, the strength of the evidence base determines whether creatine can be included in research-backed recommendations. Because creatine has such an unusually strong and consistent evidence base, it is included in clinical practice guidelines for some conditions, particularly conditions involving muscle weakness and wasting, in ways that most other supplements are not. It is mentioned in the evidence review for older adult exercise recommendations. It is studied as a potential therapeutic agent in neurodegenerative disease, not because someone had a hunch, but because decades of mechanistic research established a credible biological rationale for investigation. For consumers, the research robustness has a more immediate practical implication. You can apply reasonable quality filters to creatine information and trust the conclusions. A single study showing an unexpected creatine effect, either positive or negative, should be interpreted in the context of 1,000 other studies that overwhelmingly point in a known direction. Single study claims about creatine are almost never news because the background literature is so large that any single study is a small addition to a very large picture.